country legally as he was. Lindy, either you understand our laws or you don't, and you don't understand our laws, okay? So our laws in our country indicate,
the Secretary of State happens to agree with me.
I don't care what the Secretary of State cares about or believes, okay? I'm telling you what the law is.
He's the guy in charge.
Here's the law, Lindy.
Hold on.
This is the law.
You don't have to be cruel about it.
Do you believe in free speech or not?
Lindy.
Hold on.
Lindy.
Hold on.
Lindy. I'm going to tell you what's going on, Lindy.
Hold on.
Greetings and salutations, loyal viewers of this channel. My name is Sean, and today we're going to talk about the first episode of a show called Her Take, which is the Valuetainment, aka the PBD guys, version of The View on the internet.com that appears to feature Ana Kasparian of the Young Turks, Jillian Michaels, the fitness person who's also now anti-woke, Lindy Li, the lady who said that she raised a lot of money for Kamala Harris, and then was shocked and chagrined when Kamala Harris didn't win the election, and of course this other lady that I didn't look up the name of because she's not important to this video, and I'm trying to keep this whole situation focused. And I just want to say right off the top that even though I did watch this whole episode, I have not formulated my entire opinion on this particular format, and that is possibly due to the fact that the greatest knockoff of The View, also known as The Real, was canceled years ago, and honestly and genuinely that has left a hole in my heart that has yet to be filled. In fact, many people have been asking, how could such a thing happen? And I just want to say that that was also a sentiment that was expressed on the show.
How?
Yes, indeed, how?
People will go up.
How?
And that is my
How?
How?
Seriously, I am actually still upset about The Real being canceled, and hopefully this show could actually fill that gap in my life, but clearly and obviously that is some big pairs of shoes for them to fill, so we'll have to see how it goes over time, and I have yet to formulate my opinion. Now, in this particular case, it's not really just about Anna yelling at an Asian lady. There's some more substance behind this, and we're gonna break all of that down, but before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay? You either support free speech or you don't.
He's not an American.
Hold on, it doesn't matter. If you're in the country legally as he was, Lindy, either you understand our laws or you don't, and you don't understand our laws, okay? So our laws in our country indicate,
the Secretary of State happens to agree with me.
I don't care what the Secretary of State cares about or believes, okay? I'm telling you what the law is.
He's the guy in charge.
Here's the law, Lindy.
Hold on.
This is the law.
You don't have to be cruel about it.
Oh, big, strong, big, bad Anna.
So look, while this exchange is funny on its own because you have Lindy Li telling Anna she doesn't have to be so cruel by saying Lindy over and over again in an ever more aggressive tone, I do feel like it's necessary to bring in a little background because recently I was listening to Ana Kasparian's Unaligned podcast, and I discovered on said podcast that Ana Kasparian's mother is going through cancer, and Anna is actually donating her bone marrow to her mother.
Christian writes in and says, first, salute to Anna and her family. Okay, so for anyone who doesn't know what that's in reference to, because a few people in the comment section mentioned that. So my mom has cancer. We were told earlier this year she had a year to live at most, unless she was willing to undergo like this transplant situation. So basically her bone marrow stopped producing hemoglobin, and she had to keep getting blood transfusions, but that's only going to keep her alive for so long. And so she had a stem cell transplant. I was her donor. The process was awful. It was way worse than I thought it was going to be, way worse than the doctors told me it was going to be. And by the way, the doctors did not tell me it was going to be a walk in the park. But basically, I had to give myself these insane injections. And I say insane because they made me feel awful for about 5 days, 2 shots a day for 5 days. And it was like a growth hormone that forces your bones or your bone marrow to overproduce stem cells and then push those stem cells into your bloodstream.
So I do just want to say that we wish Mama Kasparian well, we wish her a speedy recovery, and honestly, if people out there in my audience want to send your well wishes to Ana Kasparian via Twitter, I think that would actually be a nice and decent and wholesome thing to do, especially because this clip is carried in terms of entertainment value by how angry she gets at Lindy Li. But we need to get into the actual background background of this particular story, because this revolves around a segment surrounding Mahmoud Khalil, who is somebody that the left has held up as a persecuted individual because he had his green card revoked by Marco Rubio's State Department due to the fact that, according to the left, he is supportive of the Palestinian cause, and the evil Orange Man's administration wants to punish freedom of speech. Thus, this is a First Amendment violation, and that is why it is worthy of discussion.
Do you believe in free speech or not?
No, Cruz, this is heated.
Do you believe in free speech or not?
Like losing her.
Oh, no,
I am losing it. I am losing it. Oh, big, strong, big, bad Anna. Because here's the thing. All the people who made a big deal, and I made a big deal about this as well, about the left trying to shut people up who they disagreed with.
I understand.
Are now providing cover for the same treatment that's being carried out by the other side. So listen, I don't agree with supporting Sinwar or Hamas. That kind of rhetoric disgusts me.
He's that guy.
However, he's in the country legally, okay? He's going to Colombia. Since he's in the country legally, he's going to Colombia. He is protected by our Constitution.
So here you have Big Bad Anna saying that she is losing her mind, and coming at Lindy Li saying, do you believe in freedom of speech or not? And Lindy is like, hey, Jillian, she's losing it. Protect me from this Armenian woman. I'm getting a little bit scared, and I need you to defend me. And honestly, it seems like things are going awry in this particular segment, but you can understand why emotions are getting heated, especially when you consider that there are important First Amendment issues at play here potentially. And of course, Ana Kasparian is supportive of the Palestinian cause. And by the way, even though I get accused of this all the time, it appears that Lindy Li is more of the shill for Israel in this particular segment, even more than me. And you guys all know that I'm secretly paid for by Israel, because 6 years ago I produced an education video series for the David Horowitz Freedom Center, and Horowitz is a Jewish sounding name, therefore Israel money in my pockets, which actually would sound kind of nice, and I would like to buy a house, but I'm not actually receiving that money, you dumb idiots.
What you're saying is if there was an American citizen who was in there doing the exact same thing, the same, punishment that he received would not be applied equally to the American citizen. And I get it.
Hold on. He got the visa on the idea that he would come here to study, not, militate in favor of Hamas. So that's a standard. So that's a standard you want to set, Lindy?
Oh, yeah. So your standard is if you come to the United States,
that is the standard.
Who's the arbiter of what kind of speech is acceptable?
Exactly. And I was going to say that.
So there's a lot of different talking points that are flying around from everybody at this table. You can actually see that Jillian Michaels is losing control of this particular conversation, and Anna is teaming up with the brunette woman all the way on the right of your screen that I forgot to look up her name because I'm not very good at doing my job, even though I'm doing a whole entire video on this particular segment. And I just want to point out that if the conversation were confined to speech, if we're just talking about speech and punishment for speech, whether it's on behalf of a foreign government, in this case Israel, or the United States government, that would be wildly inappropriate. If Mahmoud Khalil were being fined even $1, were being arrested, were being jailed, were being sent to prison, or anything of the sort, because he is supportive of Hamas, the most extreme version of his political activism, I would be 100% against that. Even though on the website, he has that Sinwar guy, the guy who planned the October 7th attack, and praise for him, I still think that would be protected speech, whether he is a green card holder or an American citizen. I mean, this is basic stuff that we should all be able to understand, that you have the right to say and do awful things. And again, the Constitution applies to people, not just American citizens, especially when they're under the jurisdiction of the United States of America. So again, all forms of punishment, which is the key word that I want to emphasize here, because it's a point that is not brought up throughout the course of this conversation, are restricted, again, whether we're talking about citizens or non-citizens. So that includes Mahmoud Khalil, who is in fact a green card holder.
I agree with you for the most part, but this is a slippery slope. Because who's to say that eventually being a Christian is one thing that is considered to be extreme, and they'll kick it. No, I'm just saying in the most extreme case. I understand that, but it's who's the arbiter of that?
Exactly.
I get what you're saying.
That's what I'm worried about.
There is some nuance, though, and I actually interviewed Alan Dershowitz about this. Whether you love him or whether you hate him, he is a constitutional attorney. I know. Hold on. And he actually was saying that the facts have yet to come out whether or not, or what rights this guy is entitled to. And arguably, if you are in support of a terrorist group, does that, no matter who you are, American or otherwise, does that not necessarily account to, quote, free speech.
It depends.
If it's supporting a terrorist organization, American or otherwise.
It depends. If you are providing material support to a terrorist group,
right?
Okay, we're talking about something completely different in that context. There is no evidence that Khalil has provided material support to Hamas or any terrorist group at all. And thank you for acknowledging that it is a slippery slope, because if you don't protect the speech you disagree with, and again, I disagree with anyone who supports Hamas or Sinwar, okay, that will turn around and haunt you when you exercise speech that's considered controversial by your political opponent.
So look, I gotta give Ana Kasparian credit here because she does make a good case for a slippery slope. She does make a good case for the freedom of speech version of this argument. And honestly, almost nobody on this particular panel has a good rebuttal to anything that she's saying. And in fact, she actually ends up getting Lindy Li to essentially make the case that she is in favor of restrictions in the United States of America based on our alliance with the nation of Israel.
I would wager to say that rallying in support and trying to drum up support for Hamas or even anti-Israel causes is inherently providing support to Hamas. Like, doing this stuff, like, I truly believe it. I stand with it. I can't believe that.
Which, despite the fact that I'm a paid-for Israeli shill, is something that I am very concerned about, is something that I'm very worried about, and it's something that I don't want American policy to be reflective of. And this is not just an Israel thing. This is a thing in relation to any foreign government. You are in the United States of America. Criticizing foreign governments is something that shouldn't even be all that controversial. But the fact is, there's one key component that is missing from here, and that is, of course, the legal precedent. Because Ana ends up going into this argument where she says that Mahmoud Khalil has not been proven to or alleged to have provided any kind of material support for a terrorist organization like Hamas. Therefore, it's the he broke no law argument, so he shouldn't be deported. And that's why she believes that this is a First Amendment issue, because essentially he is being punished for speech.
Here's what I would, let's put a button on this one. I think the point you're making is free speech is the First friggin' Amendment.
He needs
and it's a dangerous, if we start clipping this guy's wings, where does it go? And now I also see your point, because I don't want anti-American sentiment in the country either.
Anti-Semitic.
But I haven't seen, is there any evidence of him espousing anti-American sentiment? Is there any evidence of him himself vocalizing
I haven't done
support
the
for
on
Hamas?
Anything outside of the support for Hamas.
And by the way,
and it ended for me there.
And this is where I'm going to call out each and every member of this panel, especially Lindy Li, who is trying to make the case against Ana Kasparian for not being informed on this particular topic, because the Supreme Court has actually ruled repeatedly that deportation is not, in fact, punishment. It is not punishment for a crime. It is an administrative process. And this is where you run into issues with making the First Amendment case. Because like I said earlier on, if Mahmoud Khalil had been fined, if he had been jailed, sent to prison, or any kind of actual criminal penalty or civil penalty against him for his free protected speech that you get by virtue of being in the United States of America, then I would be 100% against it. But one of the points that Jillian Michaels touches on that I agree with even more is the idea that we do not have to grant anybody citizenship in the United States of America. You don't have a right to the green card. And by the way, this is reflective time and time again by Supreme Court precedent. Now, there's a great Hill article that I will link in the description of this video that has multiple different immigration related cases. A lot of them, by the way, are Chinese exclusion cases, so they are old, but the most recent one at least is from 1972. And it makes the case, based on the court's repeated rulings that have held for well over a century, that deportation under U.S. law, under the Constitution, is not considered punishment in any way, shape, or form. But the reason why this is absolutely an important distinction is because were the courts to actually reverse this, were the courts to actually make the case that deportation, which by the way is not the same thing as banishment from the United States, just to give you an idea of how old some of these cases are, were a form of punishment, punishment that would essentially make it damn near impossible for us to deport any immigrant for any reason at all whatsoever, because essentially you would need to provide them a criminal trial with a jury of their peers if you were to hold deportation to the same standard that you were to hold fines or jailing or imprisonment for a criminal sentence. And this is one of the things that is completely missing from this conversation, and why I believe that Anna made the best clips by yelling at Lindy Li and saying Lindy in that very aggressive way.
Okay, I'm telling you what the law is.
The guy in charge.
Here's the law, Lindy.
Hold on.
This is the law.
You don't have to be cruel about it.
Oh, big, strong, big, bad Anna.
But in reality, her arguments actually fall flat, because Mahmoud Khalil, for all intents and purposes, is actually not being punished for his protected speech. In fact, the State Department has not alleged any criminal wrongdoing on behalf of this individual. What they're saying is that they have no obligation to grant him a green card. They are reversing his green card status, which is the prerogative of the State Department, and thus he is to leave the country, again, not being punished for his freedom of speech. Based on constitutional precedent that dates back hundreds of years in this country, I actually think they have every right to do so. So while I am worried about people being targeted specifically for criticizing foreign governments, specifically that foreign government in this particular case and other cases being the nation of Israel, in reality, Mahmoud Khalil, by definition, according to multiple Supreme Court precedents, is not being punished, again, by definition, under U.S. law. And if you were to reverse that and make the case that deportation is actually punishment, that would essentially make immigration enforcement impossible. So you might not like this decision by Marco Rubio. You might think that it's bad. You might say that it's on behalf of the foreign government of Israel, and therefore they have too much influence on the United States of America. All of those things can be 100% true, but what you can't really make the case for is that this is a First Amendment issue, because again, he is not being punished in any way under the definitions of our law for his freedom of speech, even though to a lot of people, and by the way, I will even grant, understandably to a lot of people, it feels that way. The fact is, you don't have a right to be in the United States of America. A green card, which gives you permanent residency by law, which is not the same thing as you being allowed to live here forever, needs to be renewed every 2 years. If they decided not to renew him 2 years from now, or when his green card expired, then that would also be perfectly fine and under the prerogative of the State Department based on the terms that they lay out. And by the way, association and support for certain organizations has been what we have used in the past to exclude people from entering the United States and remaining in the United States if they are foreign born. Go look at our laws. Go look at our history. Membership or support or association with communist parties would bar you from obtaining a green card or visa to the United States of America. And if I'm not mistaken, those associations are actually still on the prohibited list, so we can actually block you from being an American citizen. Again, completely separate from the Israel situation. We're talking about communism in the United States of America, and that also stands, that also holds, even though, again, for a citizen in the United States of America, there would be no criminal punishment for being a member of such an organization. But the thing is, there's no criminal punishment for a foreigner being a member of the organization, and the reason for that is because deportation is not, in fact, punishment. Again, Mahmoud Khalil also knew this. This is why he didn't participate in some of the protests that his organization ultimately ended up organizing, some of the ones that went awry at Columbia, because he knew that he was at risk based on his behavior, based on the rules surrounding his green card status of not being renewed or being deported if he actually engaged in those activities. What appears to have happened right here is that he drew the line in the wrong place. There was enough for the Trump administration to remove him, and in reality, I'm not upset about this guy leaving the country for two reasons. One, because he's not being held criminally liable for any of his speech, which would be a direct violation of the First Amendment, regardless of his citizenship status. And two, which dovetails after one, deportation is not considered punishment. It is considered an administrative process where you are returned to your home country. You have no right at all whatsoever to be an immigrant to the United States of America. That is based on the prerogative of the people living here, which is represented by our government. And guess what? The government that won into power overwhelmingly decided that Mahmoud Khalil does not get to attain the privileges of the green card based on his associations and based on his activities. So yeah, those are just my thoughts about this particular case. Obviously, this was more about the hilarity of Ana getting really, really angry at Lindy, or Lindy, as she says.
Lindy.
Hold on.
But I want to know your thoughts about this entire issue, not just the back and forth between Ana and Lindy, but the Mumu Khalil issue and the other cases, by the way, that involve people that are critical of Israel, because I think there are actually better cases against what Rubio and the Trump administration are doing to be found there than this particular one. Down in the comments below. As per usual, if you like this video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social media, support me via support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about Ana Kasparian, yelling at an Asian lady. Till next time.